Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher. Today I want to throw something at you that I think we can discuss. Certainly by no means a favourable opinion. Probably not amongst many of you actually, but it's something I'd like you to consider. Maybe even throw your input in down in the comment section and we can get a little bit of feedback on this idea. The idea is levelling in new MMOs. I've got to say, recently there's a tide of new MMOs coming which are the WoW Killers, Run for the Hills! And as such, I've obviously been dipping my toe in just to check them out. You guys obviously want to know my opinion on them and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. So the only way to do that is to play them. So I played Elder Scrolls Online, played WildStar, and you know what the biggest turn-off in the world it was for me when picking up those games, turning them on, entering this brand new, gorgeous world with all kinds of funky stuff going on? Leveling. I gotta say, after a few hours in each game, I was done. I was like, yeah. I've kind of assessed this MMO, but you know what? I just don't want to level again. In any game, I don't want to do it. This game doesn't have enough of a difference for me to possibly give a fuck about leveling again. And that's the big deal. That's the big draw for me and the big fall down. That's where it all comes apart for me. And I think for many people who probably don't actually appreciate the idea that they move away from a game like WoW, where they've leveled already, or any MMO in fact. It doesn't have to be WoW, but if you've already leveled in one particular game, or maybe even several times, then you go to a new MMO, and after a little bit, the sparkle and the flavour wears off, because it doesn't take long to do that. No matter how gorgeous a game is, it's rare that that will hold you for more than, 10 hours of play. Ultimately, then you're down to the nitty-gritty of the game, and then you're looking at, well, I've got another 40 levels to go. Again. And it's such a turn-off for me. I don't know if it's a turn-off for you guys. And maybe it's one of the reasons that WoW has stood so firm in its ground. Is a lot of people say, oh, endgame content's not good enough in this game. Endgame content's not good enough. For me, it's just the leveling process in general. Ultimately, I look at my level, and then I think I've got this many to go, that many to go. It even happened in WoW, while we were doing all the 85 to 90s, which we live streamed, it was, okay, this one's got another 2 to go, this one's got another 3 to go. Doing the leveling is great. And then I want to get to the end game, and frankly, after a little while, even in a new game, the leveling becomes a bit of a chore. It's hard to mask that. For me, the only game that I didn't mask it very well was Star Wars The Old Republic, but even then in Star Wars The Old Republic, there were many times when ultimately you were doing the fetch quests, you were still looking for datacrons, you were doing this and that, and besides the immensely powerful story which you were just looking forward to, which is the great thing, is you had this part of the game coming up which was like, okay, I want to see that, I'm willing to put up with the fetch quests and the tag and talk to fucking 5 people and explore this zone and click the little marker and do all that kind of bullshit. I'm willing to put up with that because there's a really good thing coming up. When it was the Elder Scrolls and WildStar, that just wasn't happening for me in either way. That part of the game wasn't happening, and very, very quickly I was turned into go and see this guy, go and see that guy. Particularly in Elder Scrolls, it was talk to him, click the fucking runes, talk to him again, go into the fucking tomb, kill the dude in the tomb, or talk to the dude in the tomb, come out of the tomb, talk to the guy who sent you into the tomb, and then you go off and you do the next tomb, or the next fucking whatever. And oh my god, it just dragged on so hardcore. It really dragged on for me to the point where I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's alright. I'm not leveling again. And that was the biggest turn-off for me. Huge turn-off for me was the idea of going and doing all that again. I just couldn't be arsed. It's kind of something that maybe needs to be rethinked. A few years ago, we could get away with this kind of stuff. The fetch quest, the kill 5 fucking wolves, collect the hearts, all that kind of stuff. You could get away with it because it was still an emerging genre, but this genre has been around for a while, and we've also had hundreds upon hundreds of fucking MMOs thrown at us, free-to-play or otherwise. And now it's just a case of we need to rethink this model, in my opinion. If you want me to be interested in your MMO, you've got to switch it up. Guild Wars 2 tried this quite well, actually, I thought. Guild Wars 2 still came up with the idea that you didn't have to be capped, because all the leveling was similar to what was happening at Endgame, was the idea there. Guild Wars 2 tried something a little bit different. It worked for a while, just didn't happen to be the game for me. I tried it for a little while. Those of you who think I didn't play it, I did. Managed to get a refund as well, which is quite nice. But ultimately, it was still a case that, yeah, I'm doing these little events and stuff, but I'm still leveling. This leveling is still there. This number is staring me in the face, and it's not the number that's capped. It's not the number where I can access most things in the game, and blah, 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 blah. So, am I alone in this in thinking that one of the big off-putting things about new MMOs is the fact that I'd have to level again? Because it's certainly one of the drawbacks for me is leveling again, and maybe I don't even like this class, you know? I pick a class, again, I'll refer to the Elder Scrolls Online, which had really vague ideas of what the classes were and required a certain amount of research in order to dictate what this class would be like at endgame. And then you make the wrong choice, which most of us do. Most of us don't really want to sit and research the fuck out of a game before I even log in. I never want to do that. I never want to check the dungeon journal before I try a boss. Some of you love doing that. But other times I want to read what the class description is and get an idea for it. I want to feel what they're telling me about it. But when that class description is really vague, then you can make mistakes. And then you're faced with the awful thing of, well, I've got to level again. And try again to get up to this level. And now I'm facing content that I've actually already seen before. The glitz and glamour has certainly wore off by this point. And now I'm just wondering, where do I go from here? Do I want to level again? Do I want to do that? And I've got to say, in a lot of occasions, well, so far, I've not seen a game that's made me want to do that. Not seen a game that's made me think, yeah, I'll level again. No problem, son. Let's do it. Let's hammer this son of a bitch. Let's level. Let's do it. No, I haven't had that feeling at all. What are the alternatives? I've been thinking about it for a couple of days now as what the alternatives are to leveling. Suppose you didn't have a level. Suppose you just log into the game and there's your character. And I'm not saying that, well, you're faced like with every spell in the book. That wouldn't work either. What we'd have then is a glorified WoW PTR. If any of you have ever been on the PTR, where you can get a capped character instantaneously, we'll know exactly what it's like when everybody on the server is doing that. I'm not talking about the people buying level 90s as we've seen recently. I'm talking about when every single person on that server is just making whatever character they want at capped for free every few minutes and then joining a 5-man or whatever to actually experience that class. It turns into a complete fucking nightmare. Few things that might be cool is a real dedicated story like a campaign that doesn't involve the leveling byproducts, you know, the fetch quests and all that kind of stuff. Just simply a singular story mode that takes you through your character, which then either gives you a rank or something along that, which unlocks your spells, and it's actually a relatively short process. We're talking a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, something like that, and it's just a story mode that continuously takes you on a journey throughout your character's development. You're learning things. Try and think of the idea of like guild-specific stuff in either Skyrim or Elder Scrolls, for those of you who've played those games. And it's just, you know, you're going on a journey that is exploring your ideals of being a mage. And along that journey, you're going to be unlocking spells that relate to that. And then you're going to be doing similar things for the other classes. And then once you reach that, then you work into a sort of endgame world where you're brought into everybody else. Perhaps even before then, because it's only a week long, you're just with mages. You're just with similar people of your class who are intermingling on this journey together, but certainly not having to go out and say, hey, dudes, does anyone know where the rats are? Because I need to get into the rats to kill the tunnels, to do the rat vermin, and then kill the vermin boss. Sometimes quests can be fun. Don't get me wrong, I found some of the quests even in Mists of Pandaria fun, but a big turn-off in all occasions is the fact that, yeah, there'll be some fun quests, but there's also going to be some awful goddamn quests, which can be bugged, which can just suck. I've got to look for a guy, this mob doesn't have a good drop rate. And another aspect to this is the other aspect I want to bring to this, is one big problem that new MMOs suffer from in nearly 100% of cases is their endgame isn't full enough. It isn't fleshed enough. It isn't full out enough. More often than not, that's because a good massive portion of the development time of that game has actually gone into making sure that all your classes have a reasonable leveling experience and all the parts of the world that you've generated work enough to have enough quests, to make sure those quests meet the level requirements, to make sure that all these aspects are fleshed out nicely. And in fact, the vast majority of creating a new MMO isn't in fact working on the endgame at all. It's working on the leveling system to make sure people are having a good time. We're throwing in thousands of hours of dialogue and text and quest coding to make sure that the items drop and all this kind of stuff goes on. And you're working endlessly to make it what is in essence a really boring experience. Does that make enough points for you there? Is the amount of development time that goes into just creating this 1 to 50 or 1 to 60 experience is vastly superior to the amount of time spent on what you will do when you're actually at the cap. There seems to be a huge misfocus in my mind on making sure that, hey, We need to make sure the leveling stuff is really cool and fleshed out and working properly. And then in a couple of years, we'll have the end game mapped out nicely. We don't have a couple of years. Most of us trying out new MMOs are going to give it a week, 2 weeks, and then we're going to start drifting back to our old ways if you haven't captured our imagination enough. You've got about that amount of time. A lot of us won't even make it to the end game because we're just not interested in fucking leveling anymore. We're really not. It's an interesting idea. I'm kind of just done with the whole... As soon as I see the number of levels a game offers, I'm like, nah, I don't think I want to do that again. Is your game really different? Is it? Is it completely different? Because it's not. Elder Scrolls isn't different enough. WildStar isn't different enough. Maybe I'll change my mind when the game comes out and it's out of beta and I can try it in a different way. But one of the big turn-offs for me is leveling. Do you agree? It's just the idea of joining a new MMO and having to level again just kind of put you off it in general. If they said, hey, the leveling experience is actually only a week or two of casual play where you'll unlock your spells, kind of similar to how Death Knights work. I think Death Knights were a triumph in that area, is the first 5 levels were just a solid story, very much based around the class. You had really integral story events going on, but not many of them. This is the idea. Every single level you played in MMO seems to involve upwards of 40 or 50 quests. And they continue on with mixed in with instances and PvP and all that kind of stuff. When you start getting to the reasonable levels, that's a huge amount of content that's needed. When you look at a DK, you're talking a couple of hours to get 5 levels, and that couple of hours is taken by purely enjoyable set pieces of integral Death Knight lore, really making you feel part of the world, really ingraining into you the history of the DK. You're unlocking your spells and there's a reason for them, and suddenly you're full of DKs and all, you're full of spells and full of really fun stuff. And you know what? It's fun. I'm certainly not put off by re-rolling a DK, but I know as soon as I hit level 60 and head over to Hellfire Peninsula, then maybe I'm just going to be a little bit like, oh, okay, now the grind begins. Do we need the grind anymore? Do we want it? Is it off-putting, in fact? Would you rather a game say, you know what, we'll make a really cool experience for about 10 hours, and then we're just focused entirely on really cool endgame stuff, and we're going to shift our priorities instead of being 90% leveling content with enormous amounts of quests, thousands of hours of dialogue, recorded voice lines, all that kind of stuff. We're going to shift our focus away from that. The world is still going to be there, but it's going to take you on a journey through the story. And then we're actually going to focus the other night. We're going to put 10% on this leveling time, and then we're going to put 90% into the end game stuff. So when you hit that level cap, you unlock all your spells or whatever it might be, or you hit your rank, then you're going to have a fucking field day because there's all this stuff to do and you've got all these wonderful buttons to play with. I know it's not going to be a popular idea, but it's certainly one of the things that puts me off any MMO at the moment. It really does. Your thoughts, guys? See you later. Bye.